Sometimes the most important journeys don't take you somewhere new. They take you back to the place where everything began. Today, we're joined by Machan Taylor. You may know her from performing with Pink Floyd, Pat Benatar, George Benson, and Foreigner. But this conversation isn't really about music. It's about happened when MDMA-assisted therapy brought her back to the little girl living in Japan, saying goodbye to the grandmother she'd never see again, and confronting the loss she didn't fully understand until decades later. This conversation is really about trauma, memory, identity, and what it means to finally stop hiding from your own story. I'm Elite. This is Divergent States, and back again with Bryan.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
It's going pretty good right now, I would say.
That's awesome. Yeah, good. Yeah, you've been really making your moves up there going. So
I have, yeah. Just signed with a new talent agency up here, and that feels really good. When you leave an area where you have like a good network and you go to a new spot, the question is always there: am I able to replicate the same success I had there here in a new territory where I don't have the same network or the same support from everybody around me? And to have made some progress forward feels really good.
yeah, no, it's always progress is always great, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So today we're talking to Machan Taylor. She's a singer, songwriter, performer, teacher, and she just wrote a book. She's the author. She wrote Naked Out Loud. Machon has performed with artists like Pink Floyd, Sting, Pat Benatar, George Benson, Hiroshima, Foreigner, and many others. But this conversation is not really about the glamorous parts of her music career. Her memoir opens with MDMA therapy, which she started in 2020. And she found herself swimming beside a whale and reconnecting with the little girl she'd been leaving in Japan. So I think I mentioned this, that the conversation is really about trauma, identity, performance, family silence, belonging, and what psychedelic assisted therapy can reveal to someone who's already spent a lifetime trying to understand themselves. So did you have any thoughts on why she opened her book with MDMA therapy versus like being in concert with Pink Floyd?
Probably because she's humble and awesome.
Right.
Which is probably how she got into those bands in the first place, because those bands are freaking awesome. And
yeah, I love Pink Floyd. So
yeah, who does? How can you not like Pink Floyd? And
right.
and further than that, how can you not like Foreigner?
All right, or Sting, or any
Pat Benatar? Come on, dude.
Exactly. So
it's pretty awesome.
We're gonna talk to her and talk to her about her new book, and we'll be back after this break. So yeah, we're back with Machan Taylor. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much. Yeah, wonderful to be here.
Absolutely, I think it's great. We've had researchers on. We've talked about that. We've even had the Shulgin Foundation. He's the godfather of MDMA, and so you wrote a book, and you what was that? Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so the book is not obviously it's not all about psychedelic assisted therapy. It is an overview of my life and my career as a singer, a working professional singer. As you may know by now, I spent many years working as a background vocalist, and I worked with Pink Floyd, Sting, Pat Benatar, George Benson, Foreigner. Did a lot of studio work in New York and Los Angeles when I lived there for 10 years. So it's an overview of my career, as well as, and this will all get kind of woven into um, talking more about psychedelic therapy. But I go back to my childhood and also talk about that because it's a very important part of my story and how that affected my adult life. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could have opened your book, talking about Pink Floyd or Sting or Pat Benatar or any number of like major musical acts, but instead you opened on the MDMA therapy session. What was behind your choice to do that?
Well, it was an incredibly transformative experience. Um, I had done lots and lots of talk therapy over the years. And not to say that that wasn't beneficial and isn't beneficial. I still do therapy. Every other week I still see someone. And just because I think it's really good work to continue. But that particular moment in time for me, which was 6 years ago, was my first MDMA psychedelic assisted therapy session, meaning there was a therapist, a trained therapist, in the room with me, guiding me through the process. Which for people that don't know, it's a long process. So, you usually dose initially, and then you do a booster. I can't remember exactly the timing of it, but it's not too long after where you do a boost. So the entire session can last 6 hours or so, where you're really deeply involved in the therapeutic process. So that moment in time for me was just incredibly transformative and enlightening. And I felt a really magical, wonderful shift in my life at that moment. And it just kind of tied up a lot of loose ends for me. I can talk about that a little bit more if you want to get into the detail of what I uncovered. But it really, it's hard to explain, but it really was sort of a piece of the puzzle that I was missing in my personal work.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into that a little if you like. I was kind of wondering. You open it, you're talking about like swimming with this whale, and being at peace, breathing easily, and feeling almost like the whale is like a guide or a teacher. How do you understand that image now?
Well, it was so wild how that imagery came up for me during that session because before I actually took the medicine, my therapist and I talked about intention. What was the intention of doing that particular session? I didn't know what was going to come up, obviously, during the journey, but I had brought photographs of my parents, of my grandmother, of my life in Japan when I was a little girl. And they somehow seemed important for me to bring. So my therapist had this little altar that was set up, and I had the pictures there, and she had some other little crystals and just different little elements to sort of bring the energy into the session. So when I got into the journey and these images started coming up, the the whale was sort of symbolic, I guess, of my teacher, or maybe a part of me, maybe a part of my psyche that took me back to Japan, because I was born in Japan. My father was American military, and my mother was full-blooded Japanese, obviously. And because my father at a certain point decided to retire from active duty from the military, and we were still in Japan, but he couldn't find work. So he found a job in New York City, and that was the reason why we had to leave Japan. So I was 4.5 years old when we left. My older sister, who is 9 years older than I am, and my parents, we traveled across the Pacific Ocean on a military ship, and then landed in San Francisco, and then traveled across the United States on a train, and ended up in New Jersey, to where my father was from. So the whale showing up in my journey, taking me back to Japan, taking me back to the little girl part of me, reconnecting with that part of me, reconnecting with my grandmother, who I never ever saw again, after coming to America, and sort of healing. It was a very, very important part of my healing that trauma, which I call the original sin in my life. It was the original trauma, because I loved my grandmother, and my family there. It was the first impressions of the world was in that country. So my first language, my first, knowledge and family and, cuisine, everything was of that place. And when we left, it felt like a terrible, terrible loss. And, I go on to talk about in the book, various other traumas that sort of weighed on top of that original trauma as a child, and how that also impacted my life and my sense about myself, my self confidence, my sense of identity, and all of that stuff. But that moment in that original journey of mine, um, was the thing that I was missing in all my years of talk therapy, to bring me back to that little girl self and reunite with her, and to heal that trauma. So it was incredibly transformative.
Yeah, and that's the common refrain you hear from people a lot of times who've done MDMA therapy, is that it's like 2 years of sessions or 5 years of sessions, all within your one session of MDMA. So
Yeah.
it really is amazing. It's so nice and so cool to see, like, people healed all over from this. What we talked a little bit about, what is a lot of known as a recreational drug for the most part. So, and it's great to see it coming out and being more accepted.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, it was actually developed for couples therapy originally. It was developed for relational kind of therapeutic work. Yeah, I don't think it was ever intended to be a party drug, and it just kind of got out of hand.
Right, right. I think it was
um,
started. We've talked with Ann Wagner. She did a MDMA session or study up in Canada, and just they recently came out with some really good information about how good it does for couples therapy, especially. But Also,
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine just trauma in general. You know, I've talked about this before that trauma in general is probably the biggest thing in the world that's really untreated is that trauma, the post
Yes.
traumatic. So, kind of going from that, you know, you talked about this session, and it brings you back to being a little girl in Japan, and your grandmother and your family, and the pain of leaving. But before that session, did you intellectually know that leaving Japan, like, you know, you knew it was traumatic, or was it something you really understood emotionally afterwards?
It's really something I deeply understood after. Of course, I knew my story. Of course, I knew what happened in my life, but it's almost like there was a gap in my memory. It's like that piece of the puzzle that was missing that helped to link my present day self with that past part of myself and just clearly connecting with it. And yeah, it's so difficult to explain, but um, there are so many people that have done this work, military men and women that have suffered terribly with PTSD. Um, Also, psilocybin obviously is part of those experiments of coming out of many different universities: John Hopkins, Imperial College, NYU. I think San Francisco also. There are a lot of uh, studies and trials that have been going on for a number of years now, and every one that I've read about for people that have PTSD. It's been incredibly healing and transformative. And I understand. And for people that have never done this work, basically my understanding is that, and what I experienced was, the amygdala kind of gets dialed down, and the default mode network in the brain sort of gets detached in a way. It just kind of gets turned off so that you can kind of look at your stuff, your personal stuff, your trauma, your stories, the events in your life that are triggering your anxiety and PTSD and all of that. And somehow you can look at it, you can hold it, you can feel it, you can work with it. It's like, I think of it as like being a sculptor and holding that stuff and being able to mold it and play with it and work with it in such a way that you're not overwhelmed with your anxiety and your fear and pain. I mean, all of that is still there. It's not like it disappears, but you're able to work with it in almost an objective kind of way so that that's where the healing begins. That's really, to me, where it starts.
Yeah, that's a really common kind of thread you hear a lot with the PTSD is
Mm-hmm.
that it gives you like a third party perspective, almost like it's not your trauma.
Yes,
you're there just kind of observing it, and as you said, handling it and molding it and sculpting it that way. And it's very it's really awesome too, because it's one of those tools, like there aren't many tools out there that can do that, you know.
absolutely.
So there's a line of thought and trauma work that the body remembers what the mind still can't fully comprehend. Did that feel true for
Mm-hmm.
you?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm very familiar with the work of Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and I recommend it. It's great reading. Um, I definitely felt during that first session and subsequently, because when it's not one and done. So I've done several. additional sessions with MDMA and psilocybin, all guided sessions. Um, but the important piece of all this work is really the integration and what we do after, how we work with the material that, excuse me, that comes up during the session. Because the person that I work with, the facilitator I work with, is taking notes the whole time. So I walk away with pages and pages of stuff that I get to read over and to digest and to process and continue working on, in my regular talk therapy sessions. So, yeah, it's not one and done. Maybe for some people, if they're lucky, perhaps, um, a couple of sessions can really help them um, feel some sense of completion with their particular issues. But for me, to me, this journey and this work of inner processing and spiritual and emotional development is, to me, it's a lifelong process. To me, we never stop working. Uh, if you're interested in personal evolution and going deeper into these territories within your own psyche and within your own emotions. And I've just always been kind of a seeker.
Right. Yeah, that seems. I mean, that's what psychonaut means. Where we come from, or I run the psychonaut forum on Reddit, and explorer of the mind or explorer of the sailor of the soul is another way to put it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's something that, really. I think it kind of connects us all that are interested in those. We're seekers. Um,
exactly.
right. Was the pain surprising because you'd forgotten it, or because you'd spent your life kind of explaining it away?
Um, I think the depth of the pain was surprising, but I know that I needed to go there. I know that I needed to really explore that space within myself that I had not really done in talk therapy before, um, which is, it was surprising, because after so many years of doing therapeutic work, um, I didn't realize that it's like, oh, there's more.
Right.
Oh, there's a lot more
Right. It's a
here.
lot deeper than I thought it was. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably true for all of us, right? Is the process is like the unraveling of the onion, where you just keep peeling back more and more layers of yourself and of whatever your issues are.
Yeah. And kind of leads me, I'm coming to what I was saying on my next question. With MDMA assisted therapy, did you say it went beyond years of talk therapy it delivered? Do you feel like it gave you access to anything that ordinary therapy couldn't?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Again, going back to the fact that while you're doing the medicine, um, you're in a different headspace. You're not attached and activated in the same way. At least for me, I'm sure it's different for everybody. Um, you see what your trauma is. You see what the issues are. You feel them. But for me, I wasn't so overwhelmed that I couldn't stay in the process. So yeah, that's a whole different, mindset.
Yeah. Was it a reduction of fear, or the self compassion you felt, body sensation, or the ability to stay with the pain without being overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, all of it, really. Yeah, being able to stay with the pain, I think, is really key. Being able to really note what your trauma or what your issues are, and being able to stay in that space with it and really kind of work through what you need to work through, um, is that is so powerful. And for me, that was the case with my very first journey. It was very powerful.
Yeah, they can be really powerful too, especially with the psychedelic assisted therapies. Um, you say that maybe the years of prior therapy prepared you. That feels important. Do you think that MDMA worked because of that groundwork?
I think it did have a lot to do with it for me, because that territory of delving into the psyche, my own psyche, is not new. It's not a surprise. It's nothing that I'm afraid of or, you know, never discovered before. So I think, yeah, I think the prep work for me was very good and very helpful, and so it was very familiar territory. In Jungian psychology, they say he says that the the ocean and water, the depths of water, are very symbolic of the subconscious. So to me, it was no surprise that I ended up in the ocean
Right.
and swimming with a whale and going deeper into that original childhood trauma, taking me back to Japan. It all made so much sense, and yet it was a complete surprise as to where it took me.
Yeah, I could. Do you think like the whale, like kind of going back on that? Do you think that it was like a teacher or something to guide you, or what? How did you feel about that at the time?
Yeah, I did. I felt like the whale was there to guide me. It was, when you think about a whale, you think about this huge animal, and but sort of a gentle giant
Yeah,
floating in the ocean, and they're so intelligent and so beautiful. um and I felt like that was sort of symbolic of, here is the big here's the big kahuna.
right.
here here's the my big trauma that I need to deal with, but there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah,
That was sort of my takeaway, was I wasn't afraid, because in real life, if I were in the ocean right now and I saw a whale, I would freak out.
right.
In reality, I'm not good in the ocean,
Yeah.
actually. Ever since I saw Jaws as a child,
Oh,
that
yeah.
completely ruined me.
Like, nope, not going. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's I like the metaphor. It's a really but it does get to the depths, like you said, in Jungian psychology. They, the big ocean depths and the deep of the psyche, with your guide, I guess. And it kind of reminds me, I guess it'd be like the elephant in the room, but you're no longer afraid of it. You're comfortable sitting with it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad it was a whale and not an elephant.
Right, right. Whales are more fun, I think. Uh, during the session, you described the trauma as almost as if it had its own voice and needed to have a conversation with you. Um, what what did
Mm.
that conversation kind of sound like?
Yeah, well, the conversation was, obviously with myself, and with that little girl part of me that felt like she was left behind, felt like no one cared about how she was feeling about moving to America, and the shock of losing family and grandma who I loved. And in fact, I have a picture of her on my wall right in front of me. Um, yeah, that conversation was a conversation that I needed to have, that I didn't have for a really long, long time. And unfortunately, God rest my parents, they're both gone, but that they were not good at handling, um, guiding me and my older sister. They just didn't have the tools, to really kind of help us get through that transition. and later I talk in the book about Unfortunately, my dad, was a terrible alcoholic. When we came to America, his drinking got worse and worse, and he ended up being a terrible alcoholic, a gambler, a womanizer. I mean, you name it. My dad had a good time. you know, it
Right.
wasn't a good time for our family,
Right. He had a
but
good time. You guys not
he had a good
necessarily so,
time.
right.
Yes, exactly. So, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of people, as a child, feeling that original trauma and then feeling trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, it just kind of buried um, that ability for me as an adult, to connect with those parts of myself, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when I was able to have that conversation with that little girl part of me that was left behind, that was where the healing was for me.
Hmm.
Oh, it's pouring rain now.
Oh,
Can you hear it?
a little bit. That's it. That's funny. So did you feel like the MDMA sessions like changed the facts of your story? Like, or did it just change your relationship to those facts?
It changed my relationship, and I think that's the key. Is we aren't the story. We Yes, our story is important. All of our experiences as humans, from the moment we're born, um, are building blocks making us who we are, right? So you never get rid of your story. And I don't want to get rid of my story, but I did, and I do want to understand what that particular story has done to create the life and the person that I am, right? So, yeah, I think the thing about doing this kind of work with psychedelics is finding a way to process understanding your story, understanding what's happened to you, but learning to have a different sense of identification with it. So I no longer feel defined by my story and my childhood or my parents or anything that has happened in my past. To me, these were opportunities, tools, um, ways of teaching me how to be a better, happier person, right? Because when we're able to find a sense of healing with our stuff, whatever that is for each individual, when we can heal our wounds, go back and work with that stuff, then, and I can only speak from my perspective, it's how we find a sense of authenticity, of a sense of integration within ourselves, a sense of happiness and peace. And to me, isn't that why we're here? Isn't that why we're here in this body, on this planet, is to learn and to find a sense of peace within ourselves.
Yeah, you're right that the trauma can become like an operating system running in the background. So before this session, how did that operating system show up in your life?
It's a good question. Well, it's sort of a multi-layered um, situation for me. Growing up, after we came to America, we landed in a very suburban, white middle class neighborhood in New Jersey. And from as far back as I can remember, I felt weird, I felt different. I knew that I didn't look like everybody else in my neighborhood. Um, I felt uh, inferior. I felt like I wasn't enough. I felt insecure, and I grew up with those feelings of not being good enough in this world. And that is sort of the thread of, the undercurrent of my story in my book, as I talk about my career and all the stuff that I did in my singing career, which I'm very happy about and very proud about. But underneath, the operating system was saying, oh, but you don't belong here, you're not good enough, and all those subconscious messages
Yeah.
that were plaguing me for a very long time.
Like imposter syndrome still coming back to rear
Totally.
its ugly head, after you make
Yeah.
these great accomplishments and you've done all this stuff and still get that's interesting to hear, to know that even someone at your level still getting that imposter syndrome in the back. Um, so it's kind of
Yeah, absolutely.
right. So kind of as a follow up on that, psychedelic experiences really can feel really authoritative at the time. Like this is what it is. Did you ever go back and question or refine, kind of reinterpret anything that came up in the session afterward?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah. Let's see. So when you have a lot of times when you have psychedelic experiences, they can feel really profound and really just like authoritative. You know what I mean? Like this is what it is. This is what happened. This is what I got from it. You know what I mean? Um,
I see.
so you mentioned integration, which is very important to any of the psychedelic experience. So during the
Yes.
integration, did you ever have to go back and refine any of it or reinterpret it? Just maybe it wasn't right the first time.
Um, it's such a good question. I, I feel like I didn't have to change anything necessarily. Um, but I think with time and with integration, uh, the edges sort of become softer and more in focus, if that makes sense. So, because when you're in the throes of doing medicine work, um, there is potentially so much imagery and so much information that is, going on in your brain. And sometimes it can be difficult to kind of untangle, um, well, what's really important and what do I need to be working with, and so, for your viewers, I since 6 years ago, I've done about a dozen sessions, and I've done a number of sessions that are MDMA and psilocybin. So you start with the MDMA, and then the second dose would be psilocybin, and then if you want to boost after that, you can either boost with one or the other. So it's a completely different kind of journey, because, as you know, psilocybin is an hallucinogenic, whereas MDMA is not.
Yeah, we
So
tend to
it's
call
a
it
it's a
entheogenic, is what I like to call it a lot of times.
entheogenic, right, right. And yeah, so when you start with the MDMA, you get this, wonderful heart opening, um, feeling, and you're very lucid, and to me it's very clear. But then if you decide to do the psilocybin, then for me, my experience has been it takes me deeper into, um, a process because of the hallucinogenic nature. It's a different process where there's a lot more stuff that comes up
Right.
and that I have to sort of untangle later on.
Yeah.
Um,
Get kind of messy throwing the psychedelic in there with the MDMA. I see what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, but it's actually really good work. It's actually really good because I think, the psilocybin takes you to different, deeper places.
Yeah, lets you mine a little further and in the tunnels a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so you write about performing as a way to kind of hide in plain sight. So after the MDMA session, did you start to see your career differently?
Well, I didn't do any of that work until after, long
Okay.
after I had toured with Pink Floyd and all that big
Right.
touring work that I had done. So, but I would say now, um, I'm not, I'm not touring and I'm not really doing a lot of that work like I used to. I toured with Pink Floyd in 1987, 88.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be 70 years old in September. So I've been around the block a
Congratulations.
few times.
That's amazing. Yeah.
thank, thank you. Yeah, and I'm publicly saying it now because I'm at the point where I'm embracing the fact that I'm still here
All right.
and grateful, grateful to have had the life that I've had so far, and also to be in a really good place now, after so many years of doing this work, and just getting older and hopefully wiser, right?
All right.
um,
Knock on wood
but
anyway, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I do still do a little bit of performing. Because of my history with Pink Floyd, I get a lot of calls to guest star or be a guest artist with a bunch of different Pink Floyd tribute bands.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, there are a number of them around,
Yeah.
especially in Europe.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, yeah. So yeah, for the last 10 years or so, I've been doing quite a bit of that work. And so now, when I step out on stage, or when I'm singing, even just locally or something, it's just joyful to me now.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have a lot of that old stuff, all those old voices going off. I mean, yeah, occasionally. I mean, I'm human, so I'll have my moments where I'll get nervous and some of those old voices might rear their ugly heads. But I know how to deal with them now, and I don't give them a lot of power.
Yeah. It's probably better. Kind of put that out of your head.
Yeah.
And did you ever feel
Yeah.
like applause was the substitute for belonging?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would bet that there are a lot of people in the entertainment business that feel the same way.
Yeah. I would bet you're right.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
Did you ever feel like the stage was both healing and protective at the same time?
yeah, absolutely. And I do talk about that in my book, where when I was in grammar school and I started singing in church, and um, it's, I quickly started becoming a soloist in church, and then that led into me learning to play guitar and sing songs, and then I got coffee house gigs when I was a teenager, and one thing led to another. But yeah, early on, when I heard the applause and people would say to me, "Oh, you have a beautiful voice," it was the thing that gave me a sense of identity, a sense of value, a sense of, oh, well, maybe I have something to offer. So yeah, it became I don't know if it's a substitute, but it definitely became a band aid for what I was feeling internally a lot.
Yeah, that happens. That seems to happen a lot with just that. Um, I don't know. I could definitely see it with the a lot of the public performance, especially big performers that kind of substitute the applause and the accolades from the crowd or whatever is that feeling of belonging, which
Hmm.
that's what's awesome about you found yours and found the way on out through that.
Hmm.
After that MDMA session, what changed in your relationship with the younger version of yourself?
Oh, she is a part of me. I feel like she's integrated back into my being, into my psyche. Um, and now I can sort of take care of her, you know,
Yeah,
if that makes sense. If you know anything about parts work and um, I don't know, does that sound familiar to you?
yeah,
Parts work,
yeah. Working
yeah,
on just parts. Like I think when I think of it,
hmm,
I mostly think of like shadow work. Like you try to
exactly,
find all parts of yourself, even the parts you may perceive as bad, and you still
exactly.
work on that part. And so yeah,
That's right.
I could see that. So what does naked out loud mean now, specifically through the lens of healing?
Yeah, when I decided on that title for my book, um, at first I thought, oh my God, this is too much,
Right.
and I almost didn't use it. But I'm really glad that I did because what it really says to me is the book is an offering of vulnerability, of my truth, of sharing with the world my humanness, and that it's okay. Hopefully, the message is it's okay for us, for all of us, to show our vulnerability and humanness with each other. And I think that, especially now, the way things are in the world, I think we need more of that, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and especially now with AI starting to take over. Um, to me, it's a very scary prospect of what's happening with AI
Hmm.
and what's going to happen. And the one thing that I feel that AI can never substitute or take away from us is our humanness, our emotions, our just our ability as human beings to feel and be in a way that a computer can never be.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's one thing I think I've talked about at other places, but with AI specifically, I guess that yeah, you can't substitute that for a real human being. You know, um, even from like a business standpoint, I heard Microsoft has stopped. They cut all their Claude contracts or whatever it is because they found that it was
Oh,
just not efficient. They put too much extraneous code in there and it just didn't work. So
huh,
and
interesting.
yeah, so it's coming around that a lot of times I feel I think it was just the hype of the first everybody piling on, and now we're starting to take a step back and go, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done that. So hopefully it's coming to a place where it's less so much in the forefront of our lives all the time. Um, you know,
We'll see. It's yet to be
right, right.
seen, right? I think we're just at the beginning of all this, unfortunately.
That's true too. I mean, we're starting to take a
Yeah.
step back, but sometimes it gets pushed too quick and too fast for everyone. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
So for someone carrying old grief that they've minimized for decades, what would you want them to take from your story?
That it's never too late to go back and heal some old wounds because, in my experience, anything that's gone left unattended and left unhealed and unworked with um, is, like I said, it's becomes the operating system in the background. It's still there. It's still affecting your life one way or another, whether you know it or not.
Right.
And it's never too late. I just feel like whether you're 15 or 50 or 70 or 80, whatever point you're at in life, um, there's always the opportunity while you're alive to keep working on just being a happier, better human.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I would hope that everybody, especially listeners of the show, that would be kind of the point, is just to become a healthier, happy, more integrated human being. Um,
Hmm.
One quick question for the public side of the episode: where can people find out about your book and your work?
Oh, well, it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I think most major book distributors. It is I signed with a very small publishing company out of Europe, and so they're basically doing a print on demand model.
Okay,
So it's going to be difficult to find in the store. So you have to order it online.
okay.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I do have a website, machantaylor.com. If you're curious about what I've done in my career, otherwise, it's pretty much there.
Awesome. Yeah, MachonTaylor.com. Machan Taylor's book is Naked Out Loud. It's a memoir about music, identity, family, trauma, and the courage it takes to finally stop hiding from your own story. So, Machan, thank you for being here and trusting us with this conversation. It's been great.
Thank you. Okay.
Before we move into the Patreon integration session, quick reminder Bryan and I are Zendo project ambassadors. Zendo does real harm reduction work around difficult psychedelic experience, and they offer trainings for people who want to learn how to sit down with others more skillfully. We could receive a little bit of a financial benefit if you use our code. So, full disclosure there, use the code Divergent S10 if you want to support the show and check out the trainings. If you want the extended version of this conversation, that's available over on Patreon. Patreon is what keeps this show independent and listener supported. Huge thanks to everyone already out there supporting the show. Um, so yeah, this is kind of we kind of relax it a little bit, more a little conversational, and we call this the integration session. As we talking.
Okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation there. That was as much as I did. That was with Machan Taylor.
Oh, it was
Uh,
fantastic. She's
yeah,
a hell of a person to have on the show, and I really wish I could have been there to participate in that.
yeah, she's such a great. What struck me is she is such a great storyteller.
Hmm.
Like she relate her stories, and I mean, somebody of that much talent, she's up there singing with all these great bands. Of course, she's gonna, she's got to be talented in more ways, I guess. But
Yes,
yeah,
I highly recommend everybody check out her book.
right. Huge thanks again to Machan Taylor for joining us and being so open with us about her experiences. If you'd like to pick up her memoir, Naked Out Loud, or learn more about her work, you'll find links in the show notes. If you'd like to hear the extended version of this conversation, we continue over on Patreon. In the integration session, we talk about what guided MDMA-assisted therapy actually looks like, the therapist role, somatic work, recreational versus therapeutic, and a few more stories from Machon's life and career. If you're enjoying what we're doing here, the best way to support is by following the podcast wherever you're listening, leaving us a rating or review, or sharing the episode with someone you think would appreciate it. If you'd like to help us keep these conversations independent and listener supported, consider joining our Patreon. You can go and become a microdoser for $5 a month. This is less than a hit of acid. So you guys could come join Patreon.
Yes. That's finally where the fun stuff's at.
Right. Yeah. We get early access. You get video if you join the higher tiers, and it's a lot of fun. So, and you can get personal, like if you want to ask something directly to me or Bryan, I can relay it to him. We're right there,
Absolutely.
So also, Bryan and I are proud ambassadors of the Zendo project. Zendo provides psychedelic peer support and harm reduction education. And if you're interested in their trainings, you can find the link in our supporter code in the show notes. Until the next time, stay curious, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next episode of Divergent States. Psychedelics can take you deep, but you don't have to go at it alone. Fireside Project is your trusted companion on the psychedelic path. If you're having a tough trip, their free, anonymous support line is just a call or text away at 62-FIRESIDE. Planning the journey? Fireside certified coaches offer personalized video sessions to help you prepare and integrate, starting with a free 20-minute consult. Whether you're on the path, in the middle of it, or just getting started, Fireside is here for you. Learn more at firesideproject.org.